Adam Reynolds, nice to have you here, mate.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
Mate, I listened to the book a little bit ahead of time. I know it's just very recently out. And your story's incredible, and I don't say that lightly. Like, there is so much width in this book and so much depth as to, your life as a rugby league player, as a veteran of the game now, your personal life outside of that, from early days to more present days. And for a guy who has like a tough exterior and is known for being, a gritty, resilient player,
Yep.
couldn't believe how vulnerable you were. Was it daunting to be this open, knowing so many eyes would be on it?
Yeah, well, initially we thought, do we put this in? Do we leave it out? Do we, tell this story, tell that story? So there was a lot of and ah in it initially early on. And then for us, it was just about, I have had a bit of a different upbringing. There are a lot of kids going through the same that I've been through in early life. And the book's about hopefully inspiring the next generation to know that there is a way out and there's a future there if they want it. And, I thought to be raw and honest and open as much as I could be, that gives certain light to people who may not necessarily have that, that guidance through life. And, if the book inspires a couple of people, well, it's all worth it.
And I'm certain it will. You talk about that early life and life in Redfern, Elizabeth Street in particular. You, your mum, your dad, and your older brother Wayne, who seems like he's still an incredibly important figure in your life. One of the first scenes that just blew me out of the park, I couldn't believe we were receiving it so early in the book, is, you detailing your dad coming home from a hard day's work and being first on scene as a witness of a murder in your building, just 2 floors below where you and your family live. And it kind of starts to paint the picture of what you describe as a violent area growing up. Tell me about those early years, what it was like.
Yeah, Redfern, for anyone in the early 90s will know what I'm talking about, but a very, heavily crimed place. We grew up in Elizabeth Street across the road from Redfern Oval, so there was a park there. It's still there today, but it was surrounded by a lot of big trees, very dark in there and not quite safe at night, let alone in the day. It wasn't too bright either, but there was a lot of crime that happened around that area. Unfortunately for Dad, he did come home and witness a murder, but, that was sort of the everyday life in Redfern, unfortunately. But it's taught me a lot of great, life lessons. Taught me how to be humble, resilient, strong mentally. And I think those lessons early on in life, you carry that through to, I'm still using those lessons today.
And it's interesting that, I was shocked to hear you describe the area and talk about soon moving to Waterloo, but, similar feelings and themes throughout that pocket of the world. But I was surprised how you described it as still a place that you loved. You love the community, you love to grow up there. And I look at you and I watch the way you play the game and, you are a gritty player for a guy who's certainly, not one of the 6'4" Pacifica boys out there who is, rough and tumble.
I'm big though.
Mate, mate, you got that thick boy about you, But the way you play the game is so resilient with so much grit. But you're also a relatively calculated figure. You watch the way that your body language is, you're vocal when you need to be, but you're also observing.
Yeah.
Do you think that is part of, the DNA that you grew up around, that kind of area where you're watching, being observant, not necessarily speaking unless you have to?
Yeah, I think that's the life lessons along the way. Early days, you're always looking over your shoulder. You never know what's around the corner, and you certainly you don't speak out of terms to people. But look, that comes with a lot of experience as well in the game. I've had some amazing moments in my junior life. I've had some tough moments. I've been bashed a couple of times in the park with a girlfriend sitting next to me. So there's those lessons along the way as well. I love Redfern and Waterloo. I still do. It's a big part of my DNA and my makeup of who I am, and wouldn't change it for the world. I think, I've got a lot of great mates who have been brought up in those environments, and they're some of the best people. I mean, I've met people who've had it all and from an early age, and, to see the morals and the standards that they live by isn't quite, they're probably privileged in a certain way and they feel like they're better than people, but it's not until you get to the humbling experiences of, meeting people who've had nothing, who are so generous and, willing to give and, just manners these days. I think, a lot of people forget about manners and simple things in life that really matter. And certainly, I was taught from a great family. Mum and dad instilled those qualities in myself and my brother from a young age, and something that I try and pass down to my kids as well.
Can we talk about your dad for a minute? Because you just mentioned a word there. You mentioned morals.
Yeah.
And something that I picked up on early in your story is the fact that you guys lived in a housing commission block, but your dad always believed that it was important to pay market rent because he could afford to.
Yeah.
A moral like that, which is him going above and beyond what was expected of him, how does that play on your mind as a kid? Do you pick up on that stuff, or is it more you pick up with hindsight and you think about those lessons today?
No, he made it very clear that you do what's fair. I think, we were living in housing commission, but we pretty much got, looked after extremely well from mum and dad. If we wanted a footy, they'd go out and buy us a footy. We certainly did it tough from time to time, but they made sure that we didn't go without. Sometimes we had to eat 2-minute noodles. We had to eat 2-minute noodles. We couldn't afford everything, but we did what was right, and he's still like that. You don't ask for freebies, you don't ask for handouts. It's the qualities of just treating everyone equal, no matter if you're the CEO or the janitor. Everyone deserves a bit of respect, and if you do that, well, you're a good person.
That incident seems to have affected him quite a bit. I know in the book you talk about after he witnessed that murder, drinking a little bit more and maybe receded into his shell a little bit. How did it change your relationship with your dad? Because you're still young at the time, right?
Yeah, well, he sheltered us away from it a fair bit at that stage. I mean, it wasn't until probably my teenage years where we, really openly talked about it. But being through certain experiences now, I couldn't imagine, witnessing something like that and what it would do to, you mentally. And, he still had to go to work, still had to turn up daily to support his family. And, drawing back on those experiences now, certainly when I'm going through a tough time, I can use and draw back to that experience from him to, push through and get through for my family. Because at the end of the day, you've got to support, you've still got to turn up and do what's required for the family, but no doubt it had a lasting impact on him.
It's really interesting when you hear stories like your own, because the area that you describe and, the conditions of living in an area like that. I grew up in a pretty middle-class family.
Yep.
Dad was a copper, mum worked in retail and hair. And we grew up in a suburb that in the 90s was full of crime and full of drugs, and still a little bit so in Berkeley, the Illawarra area. But we lived in a pocket of Berkeley where it wasn't exactly in front of you, but you'd have your brushes with it from time to time. My dad and my mum grew up a lot harder than we did, but I feel pretty privileged having come from the house that I come from. But I talk to mates, and I've had the privilege of speaking to people like yourself on this show over the course of the last 6 years who have had completely different experiences to me. And escaping the area becomes more and more difficult the further you get entrenched in it.
Yep.
And I mean escaping sensitively, because as you said, there were so many great things about it. But it's certainly easy to get dragged into some of those difficulties and those holes that essentially pull people down. It's crabs in a bucket, right?
Yep.
Where the drugs, the violence, being surrounded by that, for some people it's you can't beat them, you join them.
Yep.
Right, and I know you detail a lot of mates getting caught up in drugs and violence, and ultimately some of them losing their lives to drugs or suicide in the early years.
Yep.
Did you ever feel as though it was challenging for you to escape that?
I'll say this in a respectful way. No. From a young age, I've always been so focused on what I love doing, and that's rugby league. I think rugby league gave me an outlet and an avenue to walk towards rather than go down the opposite path. And I go back to mum and dad, the way they brought us up. They taught us what was wrong and right. And I've had my brushes with some, trouble and whatnot, but I've always been quick to get back to, my goal, my drive in life was to, go and play football. I wanted a better life for, my family, and if that was, playing football to support that, well, that's at all costs what I was going to do. So, I mean, I had kids pretty young. I was still living at Waterloo when I had my first two kids. And
Because Talara was 16, your wife, right? How old were you
she
at
was
the time?
young. I just turned 18.
Yeah, wow.
So we were young.
Such a responsibility.
We were young, yeah. But I've always wanted kids young. I wanted to grow up. I mean, some of my best memories are running around the park with my dad and my brother and kicking the ball around. And I wanted to sort of replicate that. I wanted kids young so I could, be a young father, grow up in an environment similar to what I had and, share those experiences. And I'm so grateful for my partner, obviously. She does a lot of hard work with all that. I was working, footy, spending time with mates. So there was a lot of times where I wasn't around where she was caring for the kids, but that's a driving motive, a factor in itself, to want to take my kids away from the area and give them a life better than what I had. No doubt I want them to have some experiences as well where they sometimes feel uncomfortable because I think it's part of life. We need to be resilient to those factors in life when they do come up. And but yeah, by all means, trying to get away from the area. It wasn't hard. I love where I'm from and will always, remember where I'm from. I'll never forget that. And but yeah, there's certainly ways and challenges that it comes with as well.
18 and 16, mate, I can't even imagine that responsibility when I was that age. I'm coming up to 30 now and I feel like I'm just getting ready for it and geared up for it. And, I think about so many stories are like yours. Young guy or girl with plenty of talent who can see a future ahead of them. And, whether unexpected or planned, kids come into the picture. And all of a sudden that dream gets pushed to the side because there's now a responsibility. There's a responsibility to earn and provide.
Yep.
And so I wonder how integral was Talara in encouraging you to stay true to that dream during that time where, as Matthew McConaughey says, the head, the heart and the loins become aligned because, man, you've got to be a man now.
Yeah, well, the purpose is there, the drive's there. And when they align, the vision's quite clear. I always try and achieve dreams no matter how big they are. You tell me I'm pretty competitive as well. So you put a task in front of me and I'm going to figure out a way to complete it or I'm going to, go down swinging. So for me, it was always about staying true to what I loved. And she was a big part of that. She was all on board. And like I mentioned, she had to sacrifice a fair bit being a young mother, losing friends at that age because they didn't agree with, having kids so young. But we had each other. That's all that really mattered in the end. And then to obviously allow me to go and chase my dream while staying at home with a couple of kids. I owe pretty much everything to her through, her allowing me to live my dream. And hopefully I can repay that in the later years. There's some good times ahead, some tough times ahead as well. But, we're all on the journey together.
Mate, a really difficult thing that I can imagine was really hard to come to terms with putting in the book is Talara's struggles.
Yep.
At a point in your life where you are a little bit more established in your career at Souths and, footy's going well. You're having some wins in life. She comes into some difficulty of her own. She struggles with cocaine and alcohol addiction.
Yep.
And the way you describe it is such a surprise when this comes to light. Talk me through that period of your life and that difficulty.
Yeah, it was a really tough part of our lives. I mean, having kids young obviously put a lot of pressure on you and probably was after our second daughter. She went through a really bad patch of postnatal depression, which didn't really pick up at the time. That's sort of where the alcohol came in with, starting to drink and whatnot. It was never around the kids. It was never, leaving us short on the table with, money or anything like that. So there was a lot of people that sort of thought that throughout the book. But, we didn't understand. I think back, a couple of years, postnatal depression wasn't that big of a thing. And only women and, some men are starting to, experience that now and getting diagnosed for it. So it was left untreated for a long time. She also had a lot of, past trauma with losing her father at a very young age. That weighed heavy, so trying to get answers for that as well. And then obviously the life in, life out grind of rugby league. You know, I'm away, I'm home, all this imbalance in life sort of catches up to you. So for me, when it happened and I found out, it was a bit of a shock. And I was disappointed at first. I thought, you know, how could this happen? Why is this happening? You know, I've failed as a husband, as a father. And then you start asking questions and digging deeper and all this sort of stuff. And it wasn't probably until you surround yourself with good people that you get the right answers. And that's where Wayne Bennett sort of helped out with the marriage. I sort of lent on him one day and the help of, you know, a couple of staff members to, you know, dig some stuff up in the background and try and sort some things out with rehab and other things. But, you know, the guidance of Wayne Bennett through that time is something that I'll, you know, forever hold close to me. And, you know, how he guided not only myself, but my wife through that period. And if it wasn't for him, I don't know if I would have, you know, hung around in the relationship. I was quite emotional with, you know, being angry, you know, resenting what was going on. And, you know, through that period of talking to Wayne, I changed my mindset from anger and disappointment to support. And that opened up a bigger door, you know, that made our relationship a lot greater. We got Talara back on the right tracks. You know, she's always been a great mother. She was through that time. It was, you know, nighttime when we were all off to bed, she'd done her job and then she'd go off and, you know, do drugs or whatnot. And she was just, yeah, burning the candle at both ends. And it was time to sort that out. And, you know, if anything, being through that experience and having it in the book now, it's only made us, you know, closer as a family.
You know what I love about you, mate? You can see how much you care for your wife.
Yep.
That I can see it's important for you to point out that all of the positives exist. And I think that's such a misconception that we isolate a problem in somebody's life or a challenge or a difficulty, and we believe that it has to be mutually exclusive, that if someone's going through a difficulty, that it has to affect everyone in their life. And it does in some way, but it doesn't mean that they can't be great at other things at the same time.
Yeah.
And the fact that she was still an amazing mother, still an amazing wife and an amazing person, but had a difficulty, you know, those both things can be true at once, right?
Yeah, 100%.
And when it comes to light for you, were you guys able to talk about it, partner to partner, or was there a difficulty in breaking that down and having an honesty about it and sharing and opening up?
It was really difficult, I'm not going to lie. Just because I was so against it and what was happening. I mean...
Is that your past experience talking to, like having mates that have lost their life?
Yeah, I think so, yeah. Because I've seen what it does to people and how it affects families. And I was so resentful and angry towards the situation that, you know, I didn't want to speak. I didn't want to, you know, worry about that. I was still playing football at the time, so there was a distraction over here. I had the kids over here and then I had the problem there, and there was just a lot going on. So for me, you know, it was just about trying to get a balance and whatnot and try and work out, well, how do we fix this situation? But every time we sort of spoke, you know, in our relationship, it just ended up in an angry situation. You know, and she was doing it to try and find answers about her father. She felt that was the only way to, you know, get those answers. And it was over night time, which I found strange. I'd go off to bed, kids would be off to bed, dinner was already made, you know, so everything was normal. We didn't pick up on it. And, you know, it wasn't until, you know, discovered what was actually going on, how bad it was at that time. So,
it's almost like she was compartmentalizing it.
Yeah, it was. And she hid it away from everyone. You would never have known. Like,
so how did it come to light, if you don't mind my asking?
Yeah, there was one day I'd seen a packet of cocaine in the room, and I thought, geez, what's going on here? And I sort of brought it to the attention, and she broke down. So it was sort of the, you know, whether she was crying out for help or, you know, a bit of guidance. She was probably too scared to ask me for that. I mean, I'd rather her come to me and be honest, and I can try and help rather than finding out, you know, for myself. But, you know, a lot of people are in those situations where, you know, they think they're alone, they're fighting their own battles. But, you know, one thing I've learned is when you talk and get off your chest, you feel so much better for it. And there are people out there that want to help you. We see a lot of shame and guilt in, people who are going through that. And that's a common thing to experience. But I think people just need to know that there's people out there that care and want to see people do good. And that's sort of the message through that chapter, that you're not fighting them battles alone. There's people there that want to help and support you. And, if you're stuck in a hole, reach out, and the light at the other end of the tunnel is so much brighter.
You mentioned the word shame. Shame is such a powerful emotion. You see the way that shame essentially renders people stuck in the mud, mate, in places that they can sometimes never get out of. It's interesting, I was having a conversation with a mate yesterday about a completely different matter, but talking about how sometimes in difficulties of your own, where you don't know how to ask for help, you allow things to be seen in plain sight so that people call you out for it. And yeah, mate, it's such a powerful story you tell throughout that chapter. And how's it been for you guys? Obviously, the book's just broke in the last couple of days. Plenty of eyes on it, as you knew. I searched your name ahead of this interview. And over the course of the last 48 hours, that story is kind of the story that has caught the attention of headlines. I think partly because in a world like rugby league that sometimes feels so translucent, like any kind of scandal or challenge or difficult chapter of a player's life or their family's life, unfortunately finds its way into the media. But the fact that this didn't, how hard was it to keep all of this quiet and try to protect your family during that time?
Yeah, it was difficult. I mean, there was only a handful of people at the club at South Sydney that knew about it. Some close friends and family. But there was some family members that didn't even know about it. It happened pretty much over the Christmas break, early January. So it was a busy part of the year for most people. Not a time where you'd see, us in a social setting around each other. So it was quite hard to squash those emotions, but easy to hide it from a social point of view where kids are off to school, I'm off to work, home life no one really sees anyway. So it was easy to sort of not get it out there. I'm grateful to the people that I did share it with, that they didn't, talk and spill the beans. But we thought it was, important to, put this out there. I'm sick of seeing people, doing it tough in life, and life's so short. We should enjoy every moment we're on this earth. And if you are doing it tough, why not reach out and get a bit of help? There's no point doing it all alone. And it was tough to certainly put in the book. It's been pretty rewarding and humbling to see the response from most people. You're not always going to get everyone happy and enjoying or agreeing with what's been put in the book, but it's so much more rewarding knowing that there's people out there, fighting those battles that this can relate to, and they've already reached out and said thank you. And it's more people than you'd actually think. So I'm sure there's many more people out there that are facing these battles, but if it can give light and help them in some sort of way, whether they reach out to family members, friends, professional help, it's worth a little bit of short-term pain to help them.
Mate, absolutely. Yeah, it was beautifully written in the book, so I commend you and your wife for telling that story. Let's talk about early days at Souths. I said to you before in the studio, not to hold it against me, but I've been a lifelong Rooster supporter.
Rivals.
for good reason. And I feel like, your early start at Souths came with difficulty, mate. Adversity is a theme that consistently pops up throughout the course of your journey. And I know that there's a delayed start to your career by 2 years, just battling some injuries that kept you off the paddock. But you finally get your start at Souths, and, the boyhood club that you idolised, you are now their number 7, such a significant position to play on any field that you instantly become every child's idol in that area, right? When you slip on a jersey like the number 7.
Yep.
What was it like to get you started at Souths and start to build a career in life in and amongst that group of men?
It was unbelievable. I mean, the countless hours of down the park with dad, brother, kicking the ball around, the countless runs I went on with my dog. I mean, I ran that dog into the ground.
What type of dog?
Poor dog. It was a cattle/Dalmatian. So
Oh, had the legs for it, mate.
had the legs, but she was she was tested with the endurance side of
I
things.
bet.
I mean, I used to go for 10K, 15K runs pretty much every afternoon after school to build the fitness and resilience in the body. But all those hours that you spend leading up to that moment, sort of to reflect on when I got the call up from Madge in the hallway at Redfern there where we trained, pulled me aside to say I'd be making my debut was, one of the best feelings that you could ever have in life. All those moments I just spoke about come back and reflect on it quite quickly to, realise how far you've come from and where your journey is just about to take off. And I certainly loved my time. I loved the company at South Sydney there. Had some, incredible people with amazing stories themselves. And, we share a bit of that through, whether it's army camps or some hard truths through, stories that we tell each other. The bonds that you make through rugby league are quite special. And yeah, it was honestly a dream come true. And to, do it at South Sydney, the ground where I grew up across the road from, was quite remarkable in itself.
To have a dream for so long and finally actualize that, put that jersey on and run out for the first time is one thing. To recognize that now you have a role to play and a whole future yet ahead of you, like there's new goals and there's new plans that are in the future. There's a new North Star. Did you feel at home in the jersey? And then how do you motivate yourself to go, okay, hey, we've accomplished one thing, but now I need to set my sights on what's next?
Yeah, I've always set the bar pretty high with standards and expectations about myself. And, I never really own the jersey that I wear. I'm just I'm just occupying it for now. And there's my motto in life is always to leave something better than what you found it. So for me, it's about, trying to, better myself, to better the jersey, to better everyone else around me. Ultimately, I want to leave a legacy where, everyone can be proud of. I've had some amazing mentors in my life where, they've said one thing and it's stuck with me, whether good or bad, and you learn from those experiences. But for me to, say I own a jersey's wrong. I mean, the jersey's bigger than the individual, and I've always seen it that way. I'm always trying to better, where I found it to where I'm giving it off to the next person. And if I can do that, well, it's, an accomplishment in itself.
Yeah, I guess that mentality keeps you striving to stay in the jersey, right? Rugby league, as you allude to in the book, over the course of a long career, there's moments where you're going to get a tap on the shoulder to say, hey, you're not up to standard, and you're going to go back. And I know you had a very brief moment with that ultimately got the best out of you again.
Yep.
And we see that with players, and in the media, we catastrophize it. We suggest that maybe it's the end, and, you hear those stories and you see what ultimately feels like, these young kids have been put in the pressure cooker to, figure it out and feel like their career is at a fatal end, as opposed to just a new beginning and a new start. But you ultimately, despite the fact that you say you never owned a jersey, you owned your opportunity within those early years at Souths and became, a dominant force and, a figure loved by everyone that supported the club. But I can say that even as someone who despised the Souths for many years, I loved watching you as a player. Like, it was frustrating how fucking good your kicking game was. And, there were plenty of times where you broke my heart, mate. You talk about one of those in your debut season against the Chooks, where you go on to score 2 late tries where I thought we were home and hosed. But we build up to this moment where, you're entering the 2014 season and you feel like you've just fallen short a couple of times. There's a quote from Joey Johns where, walking off the field after bowing out to the Bulldogs, he says to you, this won't be the last time you're here, so use this feeling that you have now as motivation. But you experience that same feeling in 2013 where you bow out in the prelim again. So 2014, there feels like there's an aligned vision. There's so much pain that's been, I guess, transformed into purpose for a whole squad. and you have all of these club legends of whom you were one of that are now so determined that 2014 is going to be this year. Talk to me about the mentality going into that season and the mindset that's led by guys like yourself, Sam Burgess, your coach Madge, guys like Sutto, who have all been there and experienced that pain before that 2014 season.
Yeah, well, I'll take you back to 2012 when we lost that game. That was through, I got injured, so I couldn't have a say on the outcome. So I was, disappointed with it, but, I couldn't have a say whether the result was going to go our way or against us. We fast forward 12 months to the Manly game, and I played the whole game and probably didn't play my best game. There was parts I was happy with, but parts that I wasn't happy with. So that probably left a bigger burning feeling in the guts. We're up 12-0. We stopped playing football. Manly come back, all the momentum, they get the job done. We go into the next preseason. We lose a couple of senior players, and Royce Tarsi, Michael Crocker, some influential people in the team. So the younger generation that was in that team who have now got a bit of experience, well, I need to step up. Others need to step up. We've got some motivating factors in and amongst that as well. Sam Burgess is leaving. Ben Teo's leaving. So there's an opportunity there in a window. We know we can do something special, but it's not. We were sort of guiding through the season, waiting for the finals to happen, and then to get to the finals and relate back those two seasons, and you bring up, some past trauma and whatnot, and you use that again as motivating factors, and it just felt like we were never going to lose. I mean, we beat Manly, who were red hot at the time. I think we put 30 on them at half time and coasted through to the end of the game. Through to the prelim, we beat the Roosters. We were down 12-0, come back. Sorry.
I was on the train in Italy on a family holiday with interrupted reception. And I'm like, I think we were up, right?
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, beauty. And then like an hour later, I finally get reception back and I'm like, you're kidding.
Yeah. So, I mean, they beat us the week before the finals to win the minor premiership. And that sort of left a burning feeling as well. So there was a lot of motivating factors, but we knew we were never going to get beat. There was a wave of support, emotion, drive. It was just meant to happen. We lost Isaac Luke through the week, through suspension. That was another motivating factor. So it was like the stars aligned for us, and we were ready to, take our time and take what was ours.
You know what I love? That you talk about these motivating factors, but they're actually moments that are what most people from the outside looking in would identify as extreme adversity, as something going wrong in the picture. Because it doesn't paint perfection, does it?
No.
But it certainly sets you up for what is a fairy tale finish. So let's talk about grand final day. I remember watching that game very early in the game, which I know you didn't recognise because you're in the heat of the moment.
Yep.
Sammy Burgess fractures his cheekbone, is it not? And straight away, you're like, far out, he's gone.
Yep.
He goes on to play the game. So let's freeze frame. Talk about him as a character and how important he was to the squad.
Yeah, extremely, extremely important. I mean, a leader of men, so vocal and dominant with his actions, tough, resilient, demands respect from everyone. So he's the ultimate professional. I mean, he was so dialed in. He knew he was leaving after that game. He was going on to rugby union. So he was going to leave nothing in the tank. And you didn't want to let him down. You didn't want to ever let him down or, not do your job because he's right on your tail there to either give you a spray or, lead to worse things, putting him off his game and not allowing him to be his best. So we had a great relationship where if he went the other side and went a bit too fiery, I could pull him back in the line, and there wasn't too many that could do that. I'm thankful that he allowed me to be that person to do that. And, I always felt like I had a calming influence over people. I never let the emotions get too heated or, too high. We had this saying on the line, so you didn't want to go above the line or below the line too much. But he was so influential amongst the whole team. Big reason why we did get the job done, and as tough as they come. I seen him break a finger one day where the bone popped out of the finger, and strapped it up and got on with it. Had surgery pretty much straight after the game and played 5 days later. So toughness was never an issue with Semi. But yeah, like you said, that moment is quite, special in itself. To break your cheekbone on the first tackle, not only to just get through the game, but the way he did it in. I mean, he won Clive Churchill. He had so many tackles, so many hit-ups, and was influential through his actions through that game.
Talk to me about a player like GI. He's the guy that goes over and puts the icing on the cake, that famous Goanna celebration.
Yeah.
It's something that I feel like is burned into the memory of any rugby league fan who remembers that game back in 2014. He's a player who strikes me as very different to a guy like Semi. Still dominant, still a commanding presence, but very measured, very calm. What was your relationship with GI like?
Yeah, good. I mean, we were so tight as a group, the whole group. I think you need to be connected in rugby league. If you are to have a successful team, the whole team needs to be connected. GI was a big part of that. Whether it was socials, team dinners, he was always leading from the front in organising those and, surrounding himself with the boys. For someone who's got such a big presence in our game, willing to give and learn, give time, and teach younger players what to do. That was his leadership style, and we all know how dominant he can be on a field with his ball running. His defence. It was a nightmare spending time with him in wrestle sessions and trying to bring him down. But yeah, I think he just makes everyone around him better, purely by his presence on the field. There's only a handful of players that I've played with that have had that presence on the field, and you see it. You see it in the defensive line. People are looking for Greggy. Where's Greggy? Sometimes they get out of the way, which is nice. But it allows others to be great as well, because everyone focuses on Greg rather than focusing on actually what's important and what's happening right now. But yeah, he was just as equally important to our team as Semi, if not more.
So after he slides over, we unpause the freeze frame, and the imminence of victory is incredibly present. There's no chance that you're being beaten at that point in time. The team is celebrating. You know that grand final trophy will be lifted. After so long, after signing that first extension for the club, after going through some difficulty with injury and a little bit of a failure to launch in your very early years, before you got that debut, I remember you inked a letter to the club to say that you were thankful for their faith in re-signing you at this early stage of your career, and that you would do everything in your power to make sure that the team got to lift a premiership trophy once again.
Yep. What
did it feel like to actually lift that trophy above your head and know that you'd accomplished that dream?
It was heavy, firstly, the trophy. Not going to lie. It was a great feeling. I mean, I've never been one to put all the praise on myself. I'll try and deflect that to my teammates and everyone around me. But to see, how happy the club was, the people who have been there from, day one, to be kicked out of the competition, to see the fight, the fans be loyal, to see grown men cry is, pretty cool. I mean, the impact you can have on people's lives, through results of a rugby league game is quite special. To see how happy Redfern was. I've seen vision of Redfern Oval, people sitting in the park watching it on the big screen, celebrating with strangers. There's no better feeling as a rugby league player than when you can give your fans that feeling. And there wasn't a lot to like about South Sydney in the early 90s, wooden spoons. We were the laughing stock of the rugby league, and to fight our way back to the top, through some, influential people. George Piggins has got a lot to be credited for. The fight he had to get South back into the comp, along with the rest of the board. They fought a hell of a long fight to make that happen, and most importantly, the fans to be so loyal and stick through, some rough times to then celebrate at the end of that 80 minutes was, more rewarding than, actual doing it myself.
A contrasting emotion, but, sitting in a cafe 2021 in Redfern with club officials and you're having a conversation about your future, a playing future that by the end of that coffee, you know that you've come to the end of your time at South
Yep.
Sydney, that you've got this last year to play out. You want to finish on a strong note, but ultimately, like, your future is elsewhere. And that's, the club couldn't offer you the time that you wanted on a contract. But as you go out and start to explore the open market, you know, plenty of clubs come out of the water to find a veteran halfback who's so as consistent and as brilliant as you are. And some of those clubs are Cronulla, North Queensland, ultimately Brisbane. One thing I found interesting in the book is, you know, a couple of rumours start popping up. One is that you have a gambling addiction. Another is that you're on restricted duties due to an ongoing injury at training. And ultimately, some of these rumours have an impact on whether clubs are willing to explore a future with you.
Yep.
You allude to the fact that those rumours are coming from somewhere or someone. Who do you think?
Yeah, well, I've never had an answer, but I thought it was, I did think it was South. I still don't know where those rumours come from, and I can't say 100% it was South. You know, I've got a lot of respect and great memories, a lot of friendships at South Sydney, and still will hold South Sydney in the highest of regards. It's quite funny, actually. I still get told that I've got a gambling issue, which I sit back and laugh. You know, there's so many people who sit behind a keyboard and can just throw these rumours out and, you know, try and make things and break people down and, you know, pull them down to their level. But ultimately, at the end of the day, I know I'm a bit above that. I sit myself and everyone around me in a high regard, and it was probably one of the hardest decisions I've ever had to make. You know, those conversations were tough, but the writing was on the wall for me. I felt like I was not wanted. I felt like, you know, they were trying to, you know, sort their needs and then get rid of me. So I thought, well, you know, if I'm not wanted, why hang around? And I struggled to come to terms with that. I got a lot of great mates who were in the team. You know, I had those tough conversations with the leadership group, and you know, but with all negative and stuff that necessarily isn't what I want, good comes from it. It was good to, you know, see there was a few clubs out there that was interested in me. You know, I was really close with, you know, signing with the Cronulla Sharks. Had a meeting with, you know, Craig Fitzgibbon, you know, their board, the CEO. I really had a lot of respect, and I loved the vision that they were, you know, trying to put their point across. But ultimately, for me, I think, you know, when Kevy and Dave Donny came down to Sydney, you know, at my house, it was pretty special. I've always admired Brisbane from afar. I loved everything about their team, watching them through, you know, early parts of my career, and obviously playing against them, Suncorp Stadium. There's a lot of factors that obviously went into it, but once again, Wayne Bennett had a lot of great things to say about the club, and for us as a family, it was about, you know, challenging ourselves, getting out of our comfort zone, and you know, just trying to start something new. And I'm so grateful that I did that. It's only, you know, benefited my life and, you know, my family's life. And ultimately, at the end of the day, it's, you know, trying to keep the family happy that's most important, and that's my number one job.
We can compartmentalise footy and the club and the love for the club and the rugby league business.
Yep.
The business of rugby league is, I think, what challenges the love for the game sometimes when I speak to other players. Because of the way that the business played out at the end of your time at Souths, if your playing future ever allowed a return to the home ground, to life at Redfern, does that rule them out?
No, never. I still love South Sydney. I still watch all of their games. I'm a big fan of the Rabbitohs. I know my time's coming to an end as a player, and there's not long left, so that's, you know, a very limited possibility there. But you'd never rule out any situation in life. I mean, the situations where, you know, I don't want to do something, and it turns out to be one of the best things that's ever happened to me. So, you know, there's always a door open in any situation in life for me. I mean, I never thought I'd write a book, and
Here we are, mate.
that's led me down a path of meeting some amazing people like yourself, I've had an amazing tour, or the book tour, where I've met some amazing people, and opens up so many other doors to, hopefully venture down. So yeah, I'd never rule out the possibility of a return, but it's certainly a long way apart at the moment.
Before we move on from Souths, there's two more things I want to ask you. One thing that I found quite funny is Russell Crowe's Book of Feuds.
Yeah.
The book that comes out any time a game with the Roosters is looming. The tale of two clubs who have gone head to head in a disgruntled fashion for so long. Talk to me about a figure like Rusty and, his aura at the club, what it does for players, what it does for the energy that goes into the way that you show up for your team.
I think a lot of people are scared of Russell because of obviously the figure that he is, and rightfully so. He's earned that. He's got such a great presence around him. But the one thing I love about Russ is his genuine care for the Rabbitohs. He's a passionate supporter. He wants to see the Rabbitohs do well, and he wants success at the club. And it adds to what's already a great feud with the Rabbitohs and Roosters. I mean, the Book of Feuds is always special. And then when Russ comes in and reads it out, it fires the boys up. It gets them going. I'm sure Roosters have their little rituals that they do as well when it comes to the rivalry. But he's such a great man, Russ. Nothing but love and respect for him, and a great relationship whilst it was at South. And obviously moving on, it becomes a bit distant, but always a lot of respect for Russ and what he's done for that club.
Mate, who better to light up a stadium of fans and a bunch of gladiators and Maximus himself, hey?
I love seeing it, man. It's so cool. I mean, rugby league's such a powerful game, and it leads you to meet some amazing people, and they're humans at the end of the day, just like us, and they support the same way our supporters do, and to have him at games and is quite special in itself. But when he brings other celebrities and gets eyes on the game, it generates interest, and
absolutely,
he's a great advocate for rugby league in itself.
Mate, Wayne Bennett, your coach in that final year, and for the last few years of your time at Souths, he wrote the foreword to the book, and I want to take you to what is quite a painful moment, your last game in the green and red.
Yep.
And you have an opportunity to kick a goal from the sideline to level the scores against Penrith. Wayne writes in the book, he's a brilliant goal kicker who worked a lot on that part of his game. People will remember the sideline conversion he missed in the 2021 grand final against Penrith. But if I had my time over and needed someone to take the kick, I'd throw the ball to Adam every time. The heartbreak of missing that kick is one thing, and I don't want you to have to dwell in that too much today. But poetically, the turning of the tide, 2025, the Broncos, in what is a final season unlike any other, have a chance to go to the grand final. And not to level the scores, but to put you two in front.
Yep.
You have another kick from the sideline against a team that, despite different colours on your jersey that day, have become a great rival.
Yep.
How did you feel when you put the ball on the tee and took those steps back to line it up in the post, about potentially a repeat of painful history or a moment of real triumph?
I've said it all along, you learn from your mistakes. I mean, as a kicker, you want those moments, and unfortunately that night in 21, I didn't get it right. It still burns me. I still want that kick over. I'd love to have that opportunity again, but I know that's not possible. I was extremely confident when I put the ball on the tee. I'd been hitting them nice in the warm-up from that exact spot. I've replayed that kick over in my head thousands of times, and I said to myself, if I ever got this opportunity again, I'd run towards it. I wouldn't shy away from it. And, that's the responsibility of a kicker sometimes. You're going to be faced with those challenges, and, that's where the practice comes into play. And you need to make sure your repetition is pinpoint and perfect. And, you got to be confident standing over that kick. If you're not, then doubt creeps in. You don't quite strike it the way you'd like it. You allow the outside influence of the crowd and all those expectations to creep in. So, for me, I love those big moments. I want the ball when that time arrives, and it was good to put a few demons to rest.
Before you hit the ball off the tee, do you have an internal dialogue? Is there something you say to yourself? Is it consistent? Is it ritualistic? What does that look like?
I never say anything to myself before I kick. It's always just process. It's always routine. But I remember walking back from that situation. Dean Mariner just scored in the corner, and the crowd was so loud. I mean, it was the loudest I've ever heard a stadium. Suncorp was certainly rocking that night. I had to sort of separate myself from the emotions. So for me, it was about getting the ball and just completely shutting off from the situation, walking back, getting into the process and just going, well, this is my time. It's my time now. And that's pretty much what I said to myself before I put it on the tee. And from there, I just dialed in and went through my routine, I've lost the word, routine, or, just what I do to go and kick the ball. And I was just so dialed in on what I needed to do, my process. And from that moment I kicked it, I couldn't quite see it because there was a light pointing right where the ball was. But to hear the crowd celebrate, and I knew it was in good celebrations because it was 95% Brisbane fans there, but it was such a special feeling. I mean, the game wasn't over, but
and because you've been burned in the past by being ahead of Penrith.
Yes.
And, potentially feeling like you're home and hosed. So you probably don't get too excited in the moment, do you?
Yeah, and we keep going back to it, but you learn from that. Yeah. You can never switch off against a champion team, and they've been, one hell of a team for, the last 6 years. They're an amazing group of men who continually find a way to get the job done. So we certainly knew the game wasn't over, but we're one step closer to victory.
It's so interesting. The beginning of the 2025 season, there was so much critique of Brisbane's start to the year. And there were so many stories about, the army camp that began the preseason and Madge pushed them too hard and they're burnt out. And funnily enough, you allude to that being the reason maybe for the club's loss of faith in Madge back in 2017 when he was sacked. That you've had premiership glory under him in 2014. 2017, you recognise that maybe with the veteran headspace you have now and with the experience and once again those lessons that have been learned, you probably pull Madge aside if you get your time over again and say, hey, I think the boys are mentally worn out. We need to ease up, tap the brakes here. But it sounds like an equally grueling pre-season in 2025 that ultimately led to grand final success. So what's the difference?
Well, there's no real difference. I mean, there's a lot of similarities between South Sydney early days to Brisbane early days with Madge. One thing he does demand is excellence. Demands you to turn up and you do your best. And once you get across that white line, you compete like hell. And ultimately, at the end of the day, through the finals campaign, you've seen how fit we were, how, resilient we were on our try line. And those things are, habits of training. And we were lucky enough to, have a really good preseason. We failed the year before where we didn't quite hit the mark. So that allowed us to get back early on in November and hit the ground running, and to instill those qualities in a group in such a short amount of time is, speaks volumes of the coach that Madge is. We probably don't finish as strong. We don't defend our line as much if we don't go through those sessions early on. They are painful, but success demands hard work, and there's no secret to getting success. It is hard work, and I'm sure all the great teams in the past have obviously been through, a number of tough sessions. Madge just carries this aura about him that he's a hard man and he demands success, which he does, but I'm sure other teams are exactly the same. But there's another side of Madge as well. He's a carer. He thinks long and hard about his players, what they need, how he can help them, not only from a professional point of view, but from a personal point of view. And, when you got that care factor, you go above and beyond for those blokes to, go out there and try to achieve that success.
Well, mate, it's a huge congratulations for the success of this year. It feels so fitting, and we had this booked in a month ago, and I've never exactly been a Brisbane fan, but always liked the way they play the game, and always been a fan of the way that you show up so consistently. And so it felt like a bit of a fairy tale finish to a podcast that had been planned to have you here today. And we're going to go again, 2026. You're on again?
Yep, good to go again. So start back in December, which is exciting. I mean, the possibility of going back to back is always enticing. I mean, it's hard to win one, let alone two, and then to do it 2 years consistently. We've got such a special group at Brisbane. We've got some amazing players who are, just scratching the surface in talent-wise, and no doubt we're going to be better, but so will, 16 other teams. So challenge that we're definitely up for and looking forward to.
Mate, the book, On My Own Terms, out everywhere that people can get it. Mate, it's a beautiful book. It's so beautifully written. I have to ask you, at the end of your life, we're so early in your life now, but you have achieved so much and accomplished so much as a man, as a rugby league player, as a dad, as a husband. When eventually your time comes to an end, your eulogy is written, what do you think you'd like people to say about you?
I don't want to think about that too much, but it's a deep question. Someone that just tried to give back, and someone that was fun to be around, happy, hopefully had an impact on people's lives, and was a family man overall. So yeah.
Mate, as Maximus Decimus Meridius said at the beginning of that movie, Gladiator, what we do in life echoes in eternity, and mate, people will tell this story for a long time. So congratulations.
Appreciate it, mate. Thank you.
Pleasure. Thanks
for having me.
My pleasure.